session, I think we started. Yeah, we're looking at virtual machines. I think we saw the Windows flavor of the virtual machine in the last session. So yeah, I think continuing from there. Today I want to show. I mean, I want to cover the other aspects in VM because VM kind of touches many components. So I think, and it's one of the core product where in compute we use this. So there are some aspects of additional information that we also need to know from VM perspective. So let's continue that, and probably let's also see the Linux equivalent side of it also, if possible, in the demo today. Yeah. So with that, so I think in the last session we understood that what is like what are the other components that will be created as part of the virtual machine. Primarily the storage aspects, which is OS disk, temporary disk, and data disks, and also the optional diagnostic storage and network interface card. And by default, it will be created in a subnet inside a broader virtual network. So it is possible to have multiple subnets, and it is possible that each Azure resource, in fact, here we're talking about VM. So each VM can reside inside subnets, and they all connected via network security group, overall with a public IP and which you can access via DNS. So this is what we saw in the last session. So yeah, just going further aspect. Uh, so maybe I will also, if we go into the theory part, we will quickly cover uh, the practical on primary. Yeah, what I was thinking is I will also show you uh, the Linux version of it as well, so that you get a idea of how this works. So if I go to the virtual machine, so there are two options for you. Either one, yeah, of course you can uh, do it from the UI, or you can also do it from the CLI. But since we also already know the UA part of it, I thought of just for a change, I want to introduce the CLI part. So I was thinking to create a virtual machine from a command line interface. This time, this only difference is that this time I'm trying to create a Linux virtual machine. But again, from the UI also, it is not different. So you just want to show the UI side. So obviously, you will you create a resource group, and once you create a resource group, here what is the next virtual machine that you want to select. So at least just to understand, Azure supports all the possible flavors of Linux: Ubuntu, Red Hat, SUSE, CentOS, Debian, Oracle, Linux, Ubuntu. So all this the popular families of operating systems from Linux world is all supported. And in fact, I was reading an article that 60% of the workloads that are in Azure is all based out of Linux. Um, so yeah, I think so. The usage of Linux virtual machine is more, and revenue coming from Linux is more compared to Windows. But yeah, just to show that the power is all on the Linux in real time in the real usage world. So yeah, and yeah, so yeah, it is the same process. I think I just this time I want to show the uh, CLI route, but options are will be same more or less if you do it from the UI. But I think now let's move to the CLI world. So here you have multiple options when you want to introduce CLI. Here there is an icon which is Cloud Shell. So if I click this, so this will bring you an inline CLI. You can use inline CLI, or optionally you can also install this CLI on your machine, basically from your command line. Also, you can call this. But quickly, I want to show this option, the CLI inbuilt, the Porter inbuilt CLI option. So let's clicking a storage. By default, it will expect you to create a storage because the files inside this should be stored somewhere. So I'm just like trying to create a storage to maximize it. So by default it is creating a storage so that it can store all these files inside, and also it can yeah it all the files that you created, this will be stored inside this the storage window. So yeah, now you are connected. So if you look at here, there are two options for you: bash and powershell. So bash is what is the Linux shell scripting, and PowerShell is the Windows flavor of it. So let's start with Bash. So here by default, uh, the CLI, the AZ is, I mean, AZ is a CLI command. So everything starts with AZ. So AZ is by default installed here. So if you look at AZ is identified. So yeah, so AZ hyphen H, for example, or just AZ will give you the the all the command line help parameters. So using this you can type it. So for example, if you're interested to see the AZ account, uh, AZ account, sorry, AZ account hyphen H will give you the inputs further, where you can see what command lines are there inside, for example, account. So so likewise, you can use this hyphen H either outside or inside also, meaning is it account hyphen H also will give you the sub options under account. Yeah. So this is so yeah. So with this, I'll just quickly give overview of how to create a virtual machine from this. So I think generally the process would be this is I just have this script handy here, so just to save time. So generally what I'm doing is I'm planning to create a CLI, sorry, a resource group first with the name as some name VM demo CLI, and I'm giving the location as East US, so that I can delete this resource group later. That is the idea. So and once I create this resource group, uh, then I will create a VM. Um, then in this, I will use that resource group VDemo CLI, uh, and then of course the name can be renamed, and the user ID to connect to this Linux virtual machine is admin user, and generate the SSH keys. Well, unlike RDP in Windows, for Linux we use SSH. So I'm asking to even generate SSH keys so that I can connect to the Linux virtual machine. And this image is what you will tell what flavor you need. So whatever the Ubuntu or CentOS, whatever options that we saw in the UI, so you can select that, and of course the location. So here, if you look at, we are not giving many parameters in terms of what we saw in the UI, like the networking aspects, everything. So I mean, we're not giving any virtual network options or subnet information. We're not giving anything. So, but if you're not creating anything, it will defaults many things. So it defaults many things and create a simple virtual machine for you. But if you look at VM create has lot of options you can use. So yeah, but I will just want to keep it very simple. So with this, let me just quickly create. Make it bigger. Yeah. So just copying this. Is just creating a resource group at this point. So the output is always generally the default output is JSON. So you see a JSON output where it says the provisioning status is succeeded, and this is a subscription it used to create this resource group. So and also I'm just now creating. I'm just creating. This will take some time to create a virtual machine, but at least it is running. It will run in the background to create all those stuff. So yeah, so while it is it take at least couple of minutes to see the output. But here, if you look at in the meanwhile, let's come here. So let's quickly see whether that resource group is created. Okay, this resource group is created. VM demo CLI, and that's the first command that we ran. So VM demo CLI. So that is created. Inside this, probably I think it is now creating the virtual machine. Yeah.
I have a
It's
question.
yeah,
Sorry, Sham.
yeah.
When you created, when you provision on that command line, there is no storage, what core, or because you are creating a VM, right? You need to mention the default. Is it default storage? How much is allotted?
Yeah, yeah, sure, correct. It always takes default. So if you're not giving any input, it will take the default values. So all the CLI options, they have default values for all the parameters. So
Oh,
if you think if you yeah any of the important input that is not provided, it will highlight. For example, this is the bare minimum that you need. But
okay,
if you're missing any the bare minimum items, then it will complain with an error saying that this is missing.
okay,
But as long as you provide the bare minimums, rest of it is defaults that Azure decides.
okay. Thank you.
Right? So yeah, I think it is creating one after the other. It is creating. So I think the same components whatever we saw for Windows, more or less the network security group, the public IP, whatever we saw in this diagram. So all these items will be created. Just that this machine itself is a Linux machine. Rest of it all will be all the 7 items will be created. So yeah, that will take some time to create. But yeah, so with
Can you
this,
can you show the script again? Can you show the script and see what are the bare minimum required?
yeah.
Uh,
So just the
just
name,
yeah.
the resource group name, then admin use, I mean the user ID to connect. And since this is specific to Linux, generate SSH key, and the image name, and then the location. So this is the bare minimum required. So once in the difference is that in Windows, here you will tell what is the image of your Windows server, like is it Windows 2016 or Windows Server 2019 or whatever. So that details you give. You will not have this value. For example, generate SSH keys are not required. Yeah, I think if you exclude this and if you give the image name here, that's for whatever you need for Windows. So that same thing works for Windows also.
But you have to give the password, right? Instead, you have to give password, correct? For Windows.
Yeah, yeah, correct. Yeah, Windows you need to give the password. Yeah, you're right. Yeah, correct.
And Sam, while creating a group, we are already creating the location, right? So when you create the VM, wouldn't that take the direct location directly,
Yeah,
or do
if
we need to still pass that?
yeah, it is not required. If it is if the location is already provided here by default, it creates it. Even if said like location is
Okay,
also not mandatory. You're right.
okay.
Yeah, I tried this actually. Yeah, so it
Oh,
is
okay.
by default creating the default location that resource group is there. Yeah. Okay, I think this created. So the output, if you see here, this is what it says finished, and the MAC ID and private IP, the public IP, and the resource group name. So this is the public IP of your Linux VM. So for to connect to Linux equivalent to RDP in Windows, it is SSH here. So SSH, whatever user ID that you created, admin user. So admin user at the public IP of this Linux machine. So it is asking to validate the SSH keys, saying yes. Yes, I'm now connected to admin user at Linux. So it is just like a Linux machine. So I can, yes, yeah, just like Windows. Unlike Windows, it's all Linux, all commands. So you can use all the command lines to connect and see. So yeah, if by the, here, if you look at here also, if you look at the sudo option is also there. I mean, since people from Linux world, sudo is like a super privilege uh, on the machine. So sudo su if you type, so you'll be the root user or a super privilege user. So you can yeah, so you'll be in the same directory, but generally you're as a root now. So you can install many things, or you have super power on this machine. So you don't want, if you want to come back to your regular user, you can come back to a regular user. So the typical Linux command, nothing special about Azure here. It's all Linux, right? So and the SSH keys are what is important to know. So I'm just doing a log out. So I'm back I came out of the Linux machine and I'm back to my Azure CLI. So here, if by default this path where uh, this is the SSH folder is where all your RSA keys are created. So this is your public key and this is a private key. So generally, it is to connect to any Linux machine, you need this public keys. So I'm just this is a good practice not to store this in the here, but it's always good practice to store it somewhere because this is once this private keys are important. So this is if you miss it, you have to regenerate it. So you'll not get it again. So this is your public key that is generated. So for this Linux machine. So yeah. So generally, I showed you the simplest way of using the CLI from the Cloud Shell, but generally this you can use your own command line to install also. I mean, only thing is you need to. This is my Windows local Windows box command line, so I need to install the AZ library, but if that is installed, then you can do the same thing from your local machine also. Then it is good practice not to use this Cloud Shell for connecting to Windows machines and all, well, Linux machines, because this are all secrets, so which should not be stored in this publicly accessible location. So because the portal CLI will be used um, by someone else also. So just in case, just to be safer side, it's better to do the same thing from your local command line. So that you can save these files, say in a proper in a safe manner. Okay. So with that, we saw the Windows. Let's quickly sorry Linux version. So yeah, if you look at this, all these things are created here. So the Linux machine, the disk, the network security group, public IP, network interface, and virtual network. All of them are created. So I think more or less you see the similar options here. Um, so this is the public IP. Yeah, this DNS name is something which is also important. So generally it is difficult to remember this public IP. So you can create a DNS name here in Linux. So for example, you can configure your own domain name for yeah. So you can create your own domain name, but it ends with let's say I'm just putting so this accepts. It's not accepting. Yeah, it accepted. So if I click this save, so instead of using this public IP, which is difficult to remember, you can directly use this DNS name also to connect via SSH. You can also use this DNS name, so that way it is not remember this public IP, for example. But only catch is that this is not this is something cloud. This is something Microsoft created DNS name. So you'll have all this extra US. Generally, the domain name is like this is a region, and the cloud app .azure.com is something which comes by default for all the it is a VMs. This is the default domain name. So yeah, this region.cloudapp.azure.com is your domain name for this virtual machine that is created. Okay, so with that, so we are yeah, if we refresh it. So yeah, this came here. Yeah, and the others are all similar. What are we saw for Windows? Here in the activity log, you see all the details, and also yeah, the networking side, you see all the networking IPs. Uh, if you remember, Here again, port 22 is what is important here for Linux, whereas for RDP in Windows it is port 22 in Linux. That is one important thing you need to remember. But yeah, this always this is very common ports always in real life scenario. It is not a good practice to keep this open. That's why you see this alert. So yeah, it says don't keep this open. So it is prone for security risk. So generally, as a good practice, yeah, by default you will close it whenever you want to connect. For some investigation or something, you go for just in time JIT access and enable it for some time and then close it again. So it's not a good practice to open the common ports like 22 or RDP ports to be kept open for so long. So this is like you're opening your virtual machine for security aspects. So yeah, but apart from that, this inbound port, outbound ports. I think if you see here, we have not created all these things. So by default, all these things are created as part of the Azure default setup. So yeah, this priority numbers or something. Yeah, as you said, like if there are, you can add whatever rules or whatever ports you want to open, you can open. But this priority number, like if there is any clash in the rules that you configured, like in one place you said open, in other place you are saying deny access. If there is any clash by mistake, like Azure goes by this priority rule. So the lower the priority will given the first preference. It's like a ranking system. So the lower rank is higher privilege. So that will be considered as the final version. So if there are any clash in these rules, the priority rules are important. That will be considered. But generally, it's a good practice to give the numbers in such a way that 100, 200, 300, likewise. So that way, so if you want to add anything in between, like you can add 101 or 102 like that. So unless initially they'll not be having any values. So 65,500 is the max. Of 501 is the max value. So, but below that you can add any priority numbers. So, and then yeah, and then this connect. So you can this is one way of whatever I showed is one way to connect from Azure CLI, but also a very common usage is PuTTY. PuTTY is generally used in the Linux world to connect. Yeah, the process is same though. So yeah, you should use SSH and then your admin users. This is a domain name that I created, so it map it. Otherwise, it will have the public IP. So yeah, and then disks. Yeah, by default, if you see, I've not given any input on the size of the disk. By default, 30 GB is taken as a default value here. So size, by default, it selected the default size DS1V2 with 3.5 GB and RAM and 4 GB hard disk. Security rules are there. The security center is where I was telling you about the JIT access. Also, you can enable it, and also this will generally scan to see if there are any vulnerability aspects on your account. So it will continuously scan your account and tell you what is your. It takes some time to enable it, but I think it will slowly see your usage aspects, and then accordingly the coverage score and security score will be populated. So yeah, and also to give you recommendations if some ports are open by default to suggest you. But I think it is too early. But once you start using it, you'll see more information here, the security section. Yeah, advisor is set. Whatever we saw, the advisor. Here this will give again the recommendations in terms of how you were. I mean, based on your usage of the VM, so it will give recommendations. Let's say if you're in higher configuration, but you're not using your VM for quite some time, then it will suggest you can minimize your cost by following these recommendations. So of course it takes some time to give the recommendations to you, but
Yeah, I know.
yeah.
இல்ல அம்மா ட்ரெஸ் சேஞ்ச் பண்ணிருந்தேன்னா அப்படியே லேப்டாப் கொண்டு ரொம்ப தலை
Can you guys go on mute if someone is not talking? Okay. So then, of course, you have extensions. You can add extensions. For example, during the server startup, if you want to set up anything, for example, you have the virus scan, like Symantec or any software, popular softwares that you want to use, which you want to install it during the server startup. So they are called as extensions. So you can add extensions to your VM, so that they will be created during your VM setup. Then, of course, these are all the default. I think this configuration is something important. This configuration is where I was telling you that just-in-time access, you can enable it from here. So that way you can request for uh, 1 hour opening this port for 1 hour, for example. Okay, it is not even it is not initialized yet. Okay, I need to initialize it. But in reality, this is where you'll go to the resource and then create this just-in-time access, so that you can get the port 22 or Windows port. It will enable it for just for 1 hour. So and then after that, it will automatically close it. So that feature is available here. And this is most used feature in the real world also. So and identity, I think it's all default. So but if you want to store your keys, so you can store, for example, this SSH keys, for example, so you can store into the Azure Key Vault here. So if you have any other aspects, you want to store your security aspects, you can store it and manage it here. Basically, whatever is required for the VM, so everything will be stored in this identity section. And then, of course, these are the default properties. And export template is where you can use this configuration. If let's say you want to create a similar VM like this, you can store this as a template. For example, I'm just adding it to library. So that's the next. Yeah. So once you save this as a library, you can go to templates and it's saved in template, for example. So you can go to the template. This is a test VM that is created. So you can create or deploy this VM from here itself. So that way it is you don't need to enter all these inputs that you gave here. So for example, you can directly click agree and then click purchase. This purchase is a bit misleading. Yeah, it is just a create. So you're not purchasing anything here. But yeah, what is a common template which is purchase. Here you can not just this, you can do any, you can buy even outside images also from here. That's why it says purchase. But otherwise it just creates a VM for you. So all the inputs. So resource group is something you can create a new resource group if required. And then I'm just not creating it, but I'm just showing you. So you can create a new virtual resource group and then click purchase. So that way, if you want to create um, n number of machines, you can do that. So from here. So this is how this template will help you. This is called ARM template. That the JSON file that you saw. So this is another option that you can use. I mean, so far, if I just summarize, I think so far we saw multiple options here. To just recollect. So one is the portal that we saw from the UI, where you can give the options to create a VM, and also showed AZCLI, and then this ARM template. This is the template that I was showing you. So this is another option. From here, you can click it and then deploy it. So purchase it, so it will create a same setup of VM for you. But behind the scenes, this is uh, that the JSON file that you saw. Okay. View template. So here you can see the JSON script that is generated for this. I think it's something, it will have all the inputs. If you closely observe this, yeah, it will have all the inputs that you created as part of your input. Basically, if you look at, it will have what is a Linux name. For example, if I see the script, yeah, so this the default name, yeah, this is a Linux name. Uh, so the important sections that you need to remember, this is something which is important in real life. So for automation aspects, this is this helps a lot. Probably the DevOps guys, they use this very well. Of course, even the developers also will use this. So just for easier, I will put it here. Yeah. So if you look at logically speaking, the content version, the parameters. So I'm just looking at the high level section: the schema, content version, parameters, uh, variables, and the resources. So this is what is the high level sections available in this ARM template. Um, the most probably this schema is standard, and this content version is also generally standard. Parameters is where based on your input, that this is what the input that will ask from end user, uh, what name he want to give and other things. So the parameters is nothing but your inputs that you want to ask from the end user. So or the libraries that you want to also use it in the following section. So it is like a short wordings, which you will also use it in the script. Um, then resources is where you will tell what kind of resource you need. So generally every type, uh, there are a lot of types available for virtual machine. This is the type, but for storage, this will be Microsoft.storage and then the storage name. So likewise, every resources will have a type in Azure, and also yeah, one thing, this API version is this shows that everything is eventually translated to an API. So behind the scenes. So whatever from the UI, the inputs that you give, or the command line AZ CLI, the inputs that you give, or through ARM template, the inputs that you give, all these are all various forms of accepting the input. But at the end, all this eventually call the Azure APIs behind the scenes. So, so yeah, so finally that API is what is important. But of course, generally API is a bit difficult because it requires a lot of input. So generally, all the CLIs and UI is more handy compared to calling directly the API. So, but yeah, but behind the scenes, yeah, they all eventually call an API. So same goes for AWS also. So everything is API driven in both the cloud, worlds. But yeah, I just coming back here. So this is API version is where this is. I mean, this APIs can change behind the scenes. So that's why if you want to use the latest API, you can change it. If you know that there is a newer version of API released for creating virtual machine, so you can change that value. Right, and then apart from that, this parameters is what we saw here. This names, virtual machine names, and the properties. This properties is what VM. Uh, this is a VM profile, and also what is the version of this VM. This is Ubuntu, and the version is 18.4, latest version. Then OS disk. I mean, these are all the defaults that we took. If you remember, we have not given any input in terms of what we just told Ubuntu. That's all. We not even given what version of Ubuntu. So by default, it took the latest version available, 18.4, and the Linux, the OS type, um, also what, and also by default, it took the premium. LRS, which is like the managed disk, is what is created. Meaning for this VM to create a disk, we have two options. One is managed disk and unmanaged disk. Managed disk is something that Azure provides the support uh, for maintaining the VMs, maintaining the disk. So by default, it took the managed disk feature since you're not given any input. and also default it took 30 GB of size. Right? Then OS profile, what primarily the user ID details and the SSH public keys that is required to connect to this virtual machine. Then the monitoring, there's a VM agent. VM agent is also helpful to create and monitor the health of the VM. So and then it also created the secrets and extensions is enabled, and network profile. So by default created a NIC network interface card with the details. So this is what is ARM template. So summary, it will have a schema, content version, parameters, and then variables if you want to reuse them. For example, we can give some a is equal to, just like normal integer variables or float variables we can define here. Int a is equal to x, and you can use that a in this section. So something like normal any programming variables. And then resources is where the inputs for your Azure resource. This is compute, so it will have the compute specific stuff. But if it is storage, then it have storage specific properties. If it is something else, like based on the Azure resource, the parameter the resources will vary. So compute, that's why it's all having VM parameters. With storage, you'll have storage parameters. So likewise, every resource in Azure, it is possible to create this JSON ARM template. Um, so the advantage of doing this way is that you can put call this, for example, programmatically. Let's say you want 100 VMs, you can call this programmatically 100 times, and then you'll get 100 resources. So yeah, so that is the advantage. So yeah, you can do the
Shyam,
clicks. Yeah.
uh, so when it comes to the IP addresses, actually, we have this elastic IP address in AWS, I remember. So what is the equivalent here when you create a mission? How does it assign the IP address, and can we make it as a static?
Yeah, that is possible. Yes. So if
Okay.
I come here, yeah, just going there. Any questions here in this section? It is important to know because this is more ARM template is most used scenarios in most of the common real life scenarios. So generally, I mean, just to give some inputs
So
right
I have
here.
a question. How do you create those ARM templates? I mean, JSON files. Do we need to know JSON scripting, or we can half of this can be used through the
Yeah,
interface, or
yeah. So generally, these scripts are all. I mean, there are. If you go to, I'll just show you quick. Google, sorry, in the Microsoft itself, we have created a lot of ARM templates, standard ARM templates in GitHub. So you can mostly the quick start templates they call. So you can use this. Mostly it will have some 100 plus templates covering various resources of Azure. So, for example, starting from uh, blank template to marketplace to Active Directory to DDoS to SQL injection, VM. So all the popular standard templates you get it in the GitHub page itself. But yeah, you can generally the practice is that you can take from any standard template and then you can make changes on top of this. I mean, there's something
okay, that's what I
complex.
wanted.
Yeah,
Thank you.
yeah,
Thank
yeah.
you.
Yeah, so it is just a key value pair. I mean, as long as you know some if you understand few samples, you'll understand how this is structured. Nothing complex here. It is just some name key value pairs. That's all. So yeah, it should take much time to pick up. So for example, here SQL VM. Uh, yeah, so here you can take this template. Also, yeah, so mostly you'll have option to deploy to Azure from here itself. You can, for example, click deploy to Azure. It will automatically take you to the templates, and it will help you to deploy directly to Azure. So because now this GitHub is now acquired by Microsoft, So that integrations are all
Thank you.
provided.
This is a great help.
So, sorry.
Thank you. This is really useful. Like, yeah,
Yeah,
I
yeah,
just wanted to know. Yeah.
yeah, exactly. So this from here you can directly change some parameters, and then if you just click it, it'll help you to take you there. So you don't need to do it from scratch. I mean, mostly you will get the details in this templates itself. So you can do that, but also have this visualize feature. This is also a very useful feature that Azure recently introduced. So here you can see you can see what are the components involved in this in a diagrammatical format. Uh,
Oh, so this is another software for creating ARM template, ARM Viz editor.
Yeah, ARM is another editor, but yeah, this is primarily to visualize the structure, the various components inside that.
This is what, yeah. Okay,
Yeah,
okay. Great. I'll just note it down. Thank you.
yeah, it's not going. Uh, it's not helping to. Okay, yeah, minimized. Okay, so here you can navigate from here. What are the inputs that you want to provide? Uh, for take this diagrammatical format, this will help you to create a diagrammatical visualization. This is not a very right template, but in other places, in other templates, you saw in real time there will be a lot of very big templates will be there where you want to create entire setup of your bigger project, for example. So you can create everything as a ARM template and mimic it with just one button click. So it will so this it's all 101. I think you'll have some advanced configurations are also available. Yeah, so all 201s are a bit complex versions compared to the 101s. 301 is also there. So yeah, so you can, if you see the list
What is the
goes
extension of the ARM file? Like, what is the extension? Dot ARM or
.json,
something? Or
.json.
JSON file.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah,
Thank
yeah. So if we go here, anything, so service bus queue, for example, here, this is the .json file. Yeah. So yeah, but if you see some samples, you will understand the structure more or less. So, for example, this is one of the service bus component which is required to create. So, I mean, this is not VM, for example. This is another component called service bus queue. So for that, more or less the structure is same. The schema, content version, parameters. So, and then the variables, and then the resources. So these are the 5 sections that is required. Out of which the resources is only one mandatory section, but rest of them are optional. Um, so, but yeah, more or less, and then this outputs is what you want to see once the script is run. So, what is that you want to see here? For example, in this case, they want to see uh, the namespace connection string of the storage bus queue, which they want to print it at the end of it, and also the shared access key uh, for this. So this output section is also another section where once you run the script, what you want to see it as an output. So that is what is this output section will help you. But yeah, but this is a good template to store. So I think you can just from this see you can see that it is so many templates are available handy for you. So for you to use in covering all the various components of Azure. So you can use them in your real life scenarios. I mean, they generally said like the UI way of doing it is it's okay for learning purposes, but once you go to an advanced stages, automation is important. So that's where this JSON on templates will help you a lot. Okay. So yeah, I think let's move on. I think sorry, I bypassed your the other question on the VM. Let's come back to that. So this VM will have the IPs, right? So the IP option, if you see this, if you see, come back to this diagram. So this IP is something not at a VM level. I mean, it is at a NIC, network interface card level. So generally you'll see this IP configuration in the networking section uh, of the VM. So this is a public IP of your this thing where you can connect, or this is a private IP is also available. But if you go to the network interface card section, so this is where you see you can associate a static IP or a dynamic IP also in IP configurations. Yeah, see here. So this is the dynamic IP that is created for you. But if you want to assign a static IP, that is also possible. You can assign a static IP, and then you can select IP as static. So that way you can give a static IP here for your. That way, even if this your VM is restarted, dynamic IPs can change, but your static IP will not change. But it comes with a cost.
All right.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. So yeah, this is one. I mean, this is one myth that generally that most of people think that VM IP is associated from the VM for the VM. No, it is not associated to VM. It is associated to NIC. So network interface card. So generally, yeah. But here it is clearly documented. I mean, but you will, to see the IP address of your virtual machine, you should go to the NIC, and this is where you can see your IP address. And you can also, this is static IP. There is a cost associated to this, and but other option which I encountered recently in my office requirements is that they were using a lot of static IPs, but I just the requirement is to use some standard IP so that all these IPs will change, right? So generally they associate this IPs to some other projects for either Java project or some other Python projects where they will connect programmatically to this machine and execute or start a batch job. So that kind of requirements are there. So for that, so this IPs being static helps a lot so that they don't need to change any configuration, but it comes with a cost. The solution for that is you can also use the DNS name. So that is, I mean, the DNS names is something that will not change. The DNS names I showed you some time back, so you can see it here. Uh, the DNS name. This will not change. If once you create a DNS name, even if you restart it, the DNS name remains the same. So you can use this DNS names also for any of your requirements. And so this is free. I mean, this doesn't come with a cost. So this is called Azure DNS. So because it ends with cloudapp.azure.com. So it's called Azure DNS. So this will not change for a IP for a Linux machine. So you can use this for your any of your requirements to programmatically connect a static IP equivalent. You can use this. But if you don't want to expose this azure.com, then you can use static IP. So that way you will not show to the outside world that you are connecting to Azure, for example. But you don't have such requirements, then you can use this DNS name. Okay. So any questions here for move to the continuing the theory section of it? I mean, did I answer the question on IP side?
Yeah. Thanks, Sam. Thank
Yeah.
you. I think
Okay.
you
Yeah.
yeah. Thank you.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Okay. So yeah. So with that, let's continue with the other theory section. So we saw in this we saw the Linux version, we saw the Windows version, we saw the CLI way of connecting it. Then we saw the ARM. So multiple options are available. So you can use whatever you want. And coming back to the theory side of it, so the VM pricing, um, this is similar to AWS. Uh, Even the names are also same more or less. So there, because on demand, here it is pay as you go. So the VM that you're getting, that you're creating, so it comes with a cost. So the cost aspect, I mean, it is good to know the cost aspect because yeah, I think based on the usage aspect, you need to decide which is cheaper. So it depends on your workload requirements, how long you're going to use this VM, and is it are you going to use it for longer term, or you want a cheaper price where it's okay if the bid options that are available, so you can use that, so you get a better price. So a lot of options are there for you. But yeah, let's go each one of them. So pay as you go is like is a fixed rate. So and generally it is if you don't have any commitment for a longer run. So this is a quick win, and this is a default option also. If you're not selecting any option, pay as you go is VM is what is created for you. So generally this is require this is used for a short term requirements like running for less than 2 months or 3 months. So for that kind of requirements, pay as you go is sufficient. But it is the highest cost because you get the VM immediately, and then instantly you can start using the VM, and yeah, so this is comes with the highest cost because it's on demand. Like just like that, we're creating it and you're getting a VM. So it comes with a cost. So, but let's say if your requirement is that your project is going to run for long run, and you know that you're going to use this VM for next 1 year or 3 years, uh, then this would be a costlier option for you. So a cheaper option for that is a reserved option. So you have to reserve the capacity, like you're buying the VM in advance for the entire 1 year or 3 years. So that way you're eligible for a discount of around up to 72% compared to the pay as you go version. So so yeah, generally this is required for steady and predictable workloads, and you pay upfront the cost. So that way you get the discount. So that is the reserved option. Uh, and third option is a spot. Spot is like bidding. So same like in AWS, you can bid for a VM, and if the amount that you configured, it is more about the unused compute that is available in the for the open world. And anyone can bid for the unused compute, and if your price matched, then you get the compute. But if that is so that way you get around 90% of the discount compared to the pay as you go version. So this is one of the cheapest option of all. Like you get 90% of the discount compared to the pay as you go version. But the downside of it is it will go. If someone bids a cheaper price than you, this will go. So you lose this VM. So basically, for you should use this kind of a spot VMs for requirements where like your big data kind of a requirements where your node doesn't matter whether it is interrupted. Still, your application will not face any issues. For such kind of a workload, big data requirements, this would be a good option. So yeah, so you can always go for big data kind of requirements where you need multiple VMs. So then the spot option is a good option because you get a 90% discount on the cost. So, but again, it is not a good fit for critical jobs. So, because this VM is no guarantee anytime this VM can go off. So that is about this. So these are the three popular options. But apart from that, we have other options like dedicated instances. Let's say you are very particular about getting the hardware in terms of where this VM is created. So I mean, again, it's all it could be for any various reasons like your regulatory requirements or compliance requirements. So this want to have a dedicated instance, and this you need to know where this instance is running on which hardware in the data center. So if you have requirements like that, then dedicated instance is an option for you. This instance will be running on a hardware dedicated for you, so no control on the VM placement. I mean, that is it will be can you know hardware is dedicated for you, but it is up to the Azure to decide where your VM should be placed in that hardware. So 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 that is a difference. So but at least the hardware is something guaranteed for you. You know Azure is placing this VM in this particular hardware. So and it is so at least that part is given for you. And dedicated host is even advanced. like physical VM itself is dedicated for you. Here VM, yeah, VM can, if in regular instances, once you restart a VM, you might get a different VM, but hardware is fixed, but VM can be different. But this is even one level further, where VM is also fixed. The VM and hardware both are fixed for you. So that is dedicated host. So physical VM dedicated for use and full control of the VM placement, and also you'll have complete visibility on the sockets, the physical cores of the hardware, all these things. Again, who will use it? Again, not regularly, but if there are any dedicated regulatory compliance requirements, then yeah, then you need to go for this. I mean, just for security aspects, you want to be double sure that where this VM is getting located, and you want to trace it at any given time. So yeah, for all those regulatory requirements, you'll have a dedicated host as an option for you. Uh, like yeah, all this out of 5 options that you have. In addition to that, you can also avail the additional discount using the Azure hybrid benefit. So you can reuse your on-premise licenses, especially on Windows Server VMs. So you can also avail that as part of this VM creation. If you're already having existing Windows licenses, you can on-premise licenses, you can use it with the cloud VM that you're creating, and that will additionally give you another 14% of the discount. So yeah, so this is something very unique for Windows only feature. Where if you're a Windows Microsoft shop, then this will be definitely you can rely on your existing on-premise licenses. This is a huge benefit with Azure compared to AWS.
Sam, a general question for the group actually.
Yeah.
So yeah, we have this many options actually, right? Like so in Azure and maybe in AWS also you might have a similar thing. But in general, like because if you are on the technology side, this is all like more like a management and then we decide on what it is, right? Like so what you might ask for is a spot thing and then you might get a reserved one or the vice versa, right? So in your experience in your company, like what is the typical kind of sign up they do actually? Like is it like for a year, 2 years, maybe 5 years?
Yeah, I think in at least in my case, at least I've not seen any reserved VMs because all my projects are not long term. But pay as you go is most used. But especially for big data workloads, to avail that 90% discount spot is used. Again, this is very specific to scenarios where yeah, big data requirements, not for a common other projects stuff. But
So in our case, we use mostly yeah. In our case, we usually use reserved instances because they kind of know this is going to be there for at least 1 year to 3 years, so they go for reserved instance. Otherwise, paper. No, I don't think the people are going for spot instance, even though they say it is 90% things and so on. But losing your data is still a big thing. So people think I'll pay 20% more, so they go for reserved rather than spot.
yeah, but generally, I mean, I'm talking about all this distributed computing worlds have come. So, even if one VM goes down, still it is okay to manage because the master will be running on a pay-as-you-go or a reserved VM, but the node or a child VM or a node can can go on and off. I mean, all this big data requirements don't bother about whether VM is up or down, or it doesn't matter because it has an inbuilt fault tolerance mechanism. So yeah, for that kind of requirement, I'm talking about very specific requirements now. So which is for that kind of requirement, Spot will give a better advantage in terms of cost. But yeah, but as yeah, again, pay as you go is for all short term requirements, and for long term requirements reserved. So these two are popular versions.
Yeah. So the reason I asked is like, so if you are saying cloud is getting popular, but what is the actual contract that we are going for, right? Like, so that's exactly. If you are always pay as you go, it can go anytime. Actually, like there is
there's no commitment, right? So you can
commitment,
terminate
right? Yeah,
anytime. Yeah.
Yeah,
anytime. Yeah,
that is why they put the catch. They give you 70% to lock you.
Yeah.
yeah, that's that's always the case. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So let's move on. Then other similar to the VM pricing we saw. So apart from that, VM types. So VM types, it's again similar to what we saw in AWS. There are various. Every VM requirement will be different. So some of the it's again based on the scenarios or projects. So some of them would need compute optimized, or some of them would need memory optimized. So there's a flavor for every requirement. So the high level options are the economical, so which is cheaper. So cheaper options for simple requirements, for POC kind of requirements, economical will be sufficient. General purpose is like a balance of compute, memory, and storage is what is general purpose, which should be suitable for most of the common requirements. General purpose would be sufficient. Unless your workload is more compute intensive, then your compute optimized VMs would be a best fit. Options if it is memory optimized for database kind of a you want to set up a database kind of a requirement that memory is important. So memory optimized, then storage optimized, GPU optimized for high workloads, very high workloads. Then high performance compute, which is a recent addition in this category now. The HPC is also an option. So based on your requirement, you might have to select a VM. Very important unit that you need to remember is this ACU, Azure Compute Unit. This is what decides. Uh, it is a combination of compute uh, performance, and every machine will have an ACU value. So based on the VM that you select, the ACU will vary. And the cost will be based on this ACU aspect. So, for example, um, for example, DSV3 that we saw when we were creating a VM for Windows in the last session, we used the DSV3 as our VM size. So for that, the ACU is 160 to 190. So that is what you see here when you create a VM here. Um, Let me quickly show you this. When you're creating a Windows VM, or even for Linux also, so you can just show you Windows version. So here select size is there. So this is what I was talking about. So here, if here the cost is there here, based on the cost you can select. But here this is what the family that I was referring about, the general purpose compute intense. So the sizes will vary, memory optimized, compute optimized. So you get various options here. So this is general purpose would fit for most of the requirements, but this ACU is also equally important to know, because that will be the amount will be calculated based on that. So just if I show you the Azure Compute Unit, so this is what I was referring about this Azure Compute Unit. This SKU is what I was. This is the SKU. Um, so the stock keeping unit that is referred. And here this SKU, this SKU for various SKUs, we'll talk about D3 here. What is that? DS1 V2 or DS1 V3? Yeah, so DS1 V2 or V3. This is the one. So DSV3, for example, this is what I was using here. DSV3. So DSV3, it is 160 to 190. So this is what the compute unit that is used primarily to compare the performance of various VMs. So the more the ECU, the more power. Simply put, the more ECU, more power. So you can accordingly can see the values growing accordingly. So it comes in a range. So based on that, based on this. This is one denominator where you can say the more the number, the more powerful it is. So yeah, and if you look at the uh, various VM types are available. So starting from A series to B series, D, E, F, G, H. I mean the list goes. But yeah, but generally the convention they follow some conventions. For example, A series is generally for economical VMs. Then B series is uh, economical but burstable VMs. Burstable meaning based on your usage, your burstable units will add. Um, so if the more burst units are available, you get more power. So even though your VM is capable of the default power, you get an extra power. So and you can use burstable units when especially when you're running for a critical job. So you can use this so that you can get a higher compute for the same cost. So it's more about adding more extra power to you based on the usage. So that is BS series. Then compute, general purpose compute is D series, and especially when you want to protect your data, uh, then DC series is also there. And then in-memory requirements, hyper-threaded applications, primarily optimized for SAP HANA is one such use case where HANA is a in-memory application, in-memory database kind of an application. So for such kind of requirements, E-series will help you. Then compute optimized virtual machines. So this also far we saw is all mostly under economical and general purpose category, but here it is compute optimized. F series is what is used for compute optimized. Generally for the use case are the batch processing, web server, analytics and gaming kind of requirement. Um, Memory and storage optimization. So it's combination memory and storage put together. So especially for your databases, large SQL or NoSQL databases, you want to install on this VM. So then this will help. Then high performance computing kind of requirements, H series, primarily for fluid dynamics, Spark, and all those automation aspects, seismic processing. So all these kind of use cases use this high performance compute H series. Then for storage optimized, which is primarily for databases, so Cassandra, MongoDB, Cloudera, for kind of requirements, LS series. Memory optimized, again for SAP specific M series. Um, Largest memory optimized is MB2 series, and GPU requirements and N series. Generally for deep learning, machine learning, video editing, all these things you need higher GPU. So for GPU requirements, it's N series. Yeah, and it is. I mean, it is just a reference. I mean, I don't need to go in detail in all of this, but yeah, just to know that you have various options available when you select a VM. So accordingly, you can select the power of your VM, and then you can use it. The cost is there. The cost aspect also is there. You can, yeah, based on it, you can use it. But primary things generally you look at is the vCPUs, the RAM, data disk, and IOPS. So this generally denotes, and also if the D drive, for example, that you saw, the temporary storage, how much D drive that you need. So that is also one aspect. So yeah, these aspects will decide primarily, more or less, your power. And note that all VMs are not available in all locations. So, for example, yeah, so it's always good to look at the documentation of Azure to see uh, like which series is available in which region before you make a decision. Uh, because for advanced requirements and all, I'm sure this will not be there in all the regions yet. Maybe eventually they will come, but yeah, just keep that in mind when just ensure that your region, this VM is available. But for simple requirements, yes, these are all will be available, the low end category, but the high end category, it will be not available for all the regions set. So you should check whether for your region that you're looking for is this VM is available or Azure supports it. Um, I had a requirement where one of the customers is in Japan, and they were not having not the VM aspect. We are looking for the 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 queue storage. So queue storage is not available in Japan yet. So then we had to compromise on a different region. So yeah, so that's important to know the region aspect, right? And then yeah, that's about the VM types. Let's continue further. The next is yeah, sorry. Any questions here before we move to the next one?
You have to stop the recording, start again, or
Yeah, I think let's do that. I think not much. I think
yeah.
we're done almost. Another two more slides. Yeah, I
Okay,
think let's
then you
finish it.
continue.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So yeah, I think the next is the SLA aspect. So the SLA aspect is also important for you to decide. I mean, the SLA is something what Azure provides you, the service level agreement. So the VMs, especially, we are talking about VMs here. The VMs SLA provided by Azure is that 99.9% of your of most of these times your VM will always be available. That is a guarantee from Azure, provided if you are using premium storage for all the disks. So that is a guarantee from Azure. But if as long as you're not using premium storage, then this SLA is not applicable. Yeah. And also you get a more higher SLA, especially when this for one VM. But if you're using multiple VMs, then you get more SLA. And especially when you're talking about two or more VMs running inside an availability set. So this is like if you're running more VMs, then the one VM goes on, other VM is always be running. So that is the idea. So that's where you get more higher SLA compared to the single VM running with the premium storage. And for optimal performance, it's always recommended that you pair your VMs with the managed disks. So storage is premium and disk is managed disk. I mean, you have unmanaged disk is also available, but you can choose an unmanaged disk, which means Azure will not maintain that disk, and you are responsible to manage the disk. So, but always it's good practice to use managed disk because you don't have another headache to take care. Azure will manage it on your behalf. So yeah, so this is something on the SLA front. This availability set, I think we just discussed in the last session. There are when we are talking about multiple VMs, so it's availability set plays a major role. When you create a VM here, you have an option to select what VM you want. Uh, yeah, this availability set option is this. Yeah, yeah. When you're creating a second VM, or this doesn't make sense for a single VM. But if you're creating more than one VM, then where do you want to place the VM? You want to place it within your data center, but in a different rack than availability set. But if you want it altogether in a different zone, then it is availability zone. So again, here you are reducing the risk. If one data center goes down, both your VMs are gone. Uh, but you don't want to take that risk, then you create the second VM in an altogether different data center, which is availability zone. So that is what is this. So here, this SLA aspect expects you that this other VM is in a different availability set. So that's when you get this SLA. Yeah. And then this VM extension, this is again the miscellaneous aspect. So if you want to have any um, custom script requirements, let's say when you create a VM itself, you want to run some PowerShell script or a Windows bash script. Um, so you can use VM extensions. Again, here what I was showing you, well, the VM aspect, the VM extension. Okay. So this is yeah, you can add you can whatever versions that you want, you can use that. Um, or you can also you can create like this, or you can, if you want, if you have any script that you want to run as part of an automation, that also you can do. So when you create a VM, you will have an option to even select some scripting. You come here in advanced tab, you have custom data requirement. Here, pass a cloud init script, which will help you to install something. So, for example, I was just looking at um, yeah, this one. So this is a sample where this is a PowerShell script. You see, this is the Windows PowerShell script. So this is a PowerShell. I mean, so far I was showing you the Bash script. So you can also create a PowerShell script also. PowerShell is the Windows equivalent of Bash. So you can, for example, this sample PowerShell script is help. I'm telling to create a, while creating a VM itself. I'm asking that to, using command is a PowerShell script. I'm telling to create a web server, IIS server, and also I'm telling to install. This is the default directory of my IIS server. So I'm telling to replace that default HTML that you create. If you remember in the last session, we saw one HTML once we installed the PowerShell. So I want to override that and create a some sample value hello world from some of the computer name. So let's say I have a requirement like this. This is a custom requirement. So I don't want to during the server VM creation itself. I want to automate some things. So here my requirement is to create a VM, and also during this process you start a web server and replace the default HTML with this value. This is my custom requirement. So likewise you can add this may not be a real time use case, but I'm just giving a highlight idea that you can write your own scripts to even, let's say, install your own security software, let's say. So as when the VM is getting created, so you can, these are all automation aspects. So you can write your own PowerShell scripts, and you can use that when you create a VM. This is the various tabs when you create a VM. When you come to advanced tab, you can give that script here. So that way it will create. Give the script will create, for example, I'm not running it, but it will just create a sample. It will start a web server, and it will also overwrite your default HTML with some custom HTML, custom output. Yeah, so that's where this extensions will help you. So this extensions where you can select an extension to install. So this is the installation tab that we saw here. But this is more about the software to install. But let's say you have any custom scripts, you can write custom scripts also. So that's where this will help you. Yeah, so this will help you to configure workloads on VM by running your script when VM is provisioned. And also, if you go a bit advanced, you can also deploy and manage configuration. In PowerShell, there is an option called DSC, which is PowerShell Desired State Configuration Extension. This will help you to primarily manage the configuration. It will monitor when especially when a lot of VMs are there. It will monitor the state of the VMs, and it can take some automation based on that. Again, it's more for admin purposes. So you can it's all PowerShell specific feature. So and also, for example, we have also an option to collect the diagnostics data. So we have something called Azure Diagnostic Extension, which will help you to collect the diagnostics of all the VMs or a specific VM that you want to monitor, and can also be used to monitor the health of your application. Inside, it's not just the VM monitor. You can even extend it to monitor the health of your application also. Let's say you're writing a Java application or a Python-based application, some or .NET-based application. So even you can monitor the health of that application also, assuming that it is exposing some metrics to you. Your custom application is exposing some metrics. It can even monitor the health of your application also, not just the VM. So it is going one level even deeper. yeah. So all these extensions are all automation aspects. So just these are some advanced features, but yeah, you can use that as long as you know how to automate things. I think the last one, I think this one, yeah. The last one is VM governance. Yes, I think yeah, VM is all set up done. So, but you have to maintain this VM for a longer period, right? And that's where this governance features will help, and all the audits will happen on these VMs also. So we need some tools to ensure that yeah, it is compliant from all angles. So some tools which Azure provides for from governance aspect is that Azure Blueprints. This is another product within Azure, but primarily this is helpful to ensure the compliance and deploy the applications to production faster across your entire business. It is blueprints is nothing but ready-made VM, not just VM, I mean ready-made architectures, I would say. So this ready-made architectures will help you to from the lessons learned from the past. So Azure came up with a lot of blueprints. Again, AWS is also having similar concept. They also call it blueprints there. So these blueprints are the common. I mean, it's a good learning. So you can look at these blueprints where the common architectural patterns are all covered as part of an automation script. So that is one liner. So it is also having some scripts are also even advanced level of even ensuring the compliance also. So you can use that to while you create a VM or while you create an architecture, you can use Azure Blueprints, which will have some
Sorry,
compliance
where is it
also is taken
available,
care.
sir? Where is it available? Is it in GitHub or is it on Azure
Yeah,
documentation?
yeah, it is. I'll show you. Is there here? Blueprints.
Oh, on the Azure portal
Azure
itself, you can
portal
find
itself.
it.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
So you can create a lot of like templates and policies which are there, and you can also create from. Just go here. I was really impressed with this. I was also reading this first time when I saw this, but as I said, like the one option which I showed is that ARM templates, right? So this is one option where you can use that most of it. But apart from that, Azure is coming up with this blueprint where you can write your all the common popular options are all available. If you go to quick starts, right, you will see you can create a blueprint and you can associate an artifact to it. So, for example, like this is one ARM template, which for example, so this
But
create
both are same, right? ARM template and this looks same, right?
yeah it is same, but the only thing is there are default artifacts that are available. It's not just ARM template. You can also create PowerShell script. I mean, you can same thing whatever you're doing in ARM template, you can write as a PowerShell script also. That is also available, and CLI. Basically, it supports all. I mean, it is it's an extension. So it is there. It is just ARM template whatever we saw, but it is blueprint is nothing but some people like the JSON format, some people like PowerShell, some people like CLI, some people
Oh,
like
complete end to end.
end to end. Yes,
End to end.
exactly.
Okay, thank
So
you.
whatever you prefer, whatever you like. So accordingly, there's a they consolidated all the common resources into reusable scripts, so which you can use it, and maybe you can edit it for your own requirement. But there are templates available, so you can rely on these templates for you to. If you want to, especially starting something from scratch, you can rely on these templates to make your life easy. That's
And can we leverage that also? For example, if we create a blueprint and then I'm defining the template, so
mm,
can I leverage, because instead of starting from the scratch,
mm.
can I leverage whatever I created from the
Yeah,
blueprint?
exactly.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, for example,
Okay.
yeah, this blueprints will you can click and launch it directly from here. I meant to explore it this section in detail, but you can, for example, you can copy this script and maybe let's try it here. So let's try to sign in. From here itself, let's say you can create, go to
Nice.
particular thing, and then it will connect you to the VM from to the Azure VM directly.
Wow.
See here, it launches Azure Cloud Shell, whatever we saw there. So that is this. Um, it will automatically run this script for you. So similar to the template that we saw here, some somewhere we saw that it will have a link deploy from here GitHub directly. Similarly, you can also
Oh,
launch it directly from here.
oh, wow.
So in the browser itself, it is opening a Cloud Shell for you, and then you can run the scripts from here. Where is
Wow.
that?
Nice.
Yeah.
Okay.
So for this is a PowerShell equivalent for this requirement. So yeah, this is a blueprint JSON file, and this is a PowerShell equivalent. And the here the so basically it is nothing but it is launching the blueprint script for you, and this is the blueprint.json. So again, then the blueprints are also some JSON templates similar to ARM templates. So they have the reusable aspect. Based on various architectural patterns, they came with a lot of blueprint JSONs. So you can directly launch the blueprint if you want to try it out. Directly from here, you can try it out and then run the script. For example, you can run this. Sorry, copy options here. You can run from here and place it. I'm not running it, but I'm just if you click enter, this will automatically create this JSON file for you. I just want to see what is this JSON before I hit it. But yeah, more or less it is creating this blue script is nothing but it is creating a tag policy role assignment, yeah, and create a deploy the resources. So it is nothing but this blueprint is primarily it is helping you to define and assign blueprints with PowerShell. I randomly picked it, but yeah, this is primarily it is helping you to create a policy, security, and other aspects using ARM templates. So if you want any of your requirements to use like the proper security aspects, then you can use this blueprint, for example. Like there are a lot of blueprints are available, so you can use them for a reference. We will take a detailed session on this, following session. Uh, but yeah, this is a good start to use that, right? And then let's go to that. And this advisor, this is another feature that we saw. So this Azure Advisor, we already saw in the VMs where when you're creating a VM, you can Advisor will give you recommendations to you based on the usage aspects. So Advisor recommendations. This takes, I mean, you have to use it for some time, so only then you'll see some recommendations. But I think assuming that you have 3 months of usage aspect, then you will see better recommendations here. So it will give recommendations based on cost aspect. Okay, so it's not done there. So generally you see some recommendations here based on that you can take some actions from here. So that is one area. Primarily for high availability, security, performance, and cost. These are aspects that this advisor will primarily consider. Let's say your architecture is not for example, the VM is not having high availability covered, so it will give recommendations to you for high availability or security. If you are missing any, for example, the port for is one such case where the port 22, if you open it for a long time, it will give recommendations that it is not advisable to use the port open. Instead, use JIT for your option. So I mean, these are all some recommendations that it give perform based on the usage. It will give performance aspect and cost aspect also. It will give recommendations. Then the other one is the backup. So I mean, this is generally the VM that you are taking that you're using. You generally in enterprise you need to have backup for your VM, right? So you can use Azure Backup as it's another tool within Azure. So using that you can backup your VM. Again, you can select a slot and other things where you create a VM. Azure Backup. Backup pods. So backup vaults is where you can create not sure what happened, but generally in the vaults primarily this is primarily meant for you to take a backup of your VM just to safeguard against malware and other things also. So and there are a lot of products available in the marketplace also. You can take it's not just you don't need to go for the Azure specific backup, but you can also use other external third party from marketplace also for your backup requirements. So that's about the backup, and then monitor. This is again from the VM itself. You can see that you can get insights of your VM, and uh, yeah. So this is monitoring. So you get insights, application insights of using Azure Monitor is one of the popular tool. Again, it's equivalent to CloudWatch in the AWS world. So it will continuously monitor the health of your VM, and then based on the CPU utilization, disk utilization, so it will give you alerts and recommendations and other things. So generally, a very common problem is that we generally forget to look at the CPU size of the VM, or the CPU utilization of the VM, or the disk space. We'll create a VM, and behind the scenes, some application will be running there, but the application is generating a lot of logs, right? So which is eating up your disk space. But at some point, maybe 3 months to 6 months or 1 year from down the line, your disk is running out of space. Uh, these monitors will help you to identify them. So you can configure an alert using monitor. This is where this alerts will help you here. You can create an alert here based on your resource utilization. You can configure an alert based on that. It will help you to identify the running short of the space. For example, in this VM, the sample alert creation, I just want to show. So here you can select your VM, uh, and then you can select a condition. Uh, okay. I need to enable this first. Yeah, maybe we'll take this in the next session. Take some time to create a VM configuration. VM should be enabled for monitoring. Maybe I think we're running short of time. It'll take some time, but yeah, I will cover this VM monitoring, which is still the bigger topic. So generally, this VM monitoring this VM creation is all day one activity, but the day two activities are where this operations tab itself will help you. So this is a backup option here: disaster recovery, update management, configuration management. So run command. So these are all various options that you need for when you're especially the day two operations tab. So this is equally important for you to know. Yeah, I think I will take a separate session. And then monitoring is also another session where you can configure alerts, and generate insights and metrics for VM and all those things. You can do it from here. So yeah, I think this will cover in the next session to expand this section.
Yeah,
Okay.
I think good log we read. So you just try to stop the video and see
Yeah.
if that is okay. So
Yeah.
anybody has any other use cases to discuss? If not, we can wind up.
So, Sam, we covered this much. Like, I think we didn't cover this much of practical governance of VM governance within Amazon.